on? Welcome to the Sunday Morning Corner, man, part of the Cageside Press Podcast Network. On this episode of the SMC, we will discuss all the relevant fights from UFC on ESPN +6, Thompson versus Pettis, a.k.a. UFC Fight Night Nashville. I will do all of this with my co-host this week, who we read on several platforms, including, but not limited to, SureDog.com, Fansided.com, and he is part of Loudmouth Network. I'm talking, of course, of Keith Shillan. Keith, how are you?
Good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, man. I'm getting to talk fights with a guy who knows what he's talking about. So what's better than that, right?
I don't know if I know what I'm talking about, but I'll pretend I do.
Well, hey, man, you got to fake it till you make it, right? So I think we'll be all right. All right, well, Keith, the UFC bus stopped in Nashville and put together an all right fight card with a great main event. When you saw this fight card initially, what were your thoughts?
I mean, to me, this was basically just for hardcores. And, I mean, the only fight that really jumped out at me is one that I was really interested in was the Jose Formiga, Davison Figueiredo fight. That was a fight I think a lot of hardcore fans would be into. It's not often that casual fans are going to be into one flyweights, two Brazilian flyweights who they probably never heard of. As far as the main event, obviously you already mentioned that it delivered, but it wasn't a fight that I don't think anybody was calling for, not casuals or hardcore fans. I mean, Pettis was on this, he's been on a terrible run. Stephen Thompson is not, he's not the most marketable guy, not a big trash talker. Pettis going up in weight. He's going up in weight, and nobody was asking him to go up in weight. So there wasn't a lot of buzz. It was going against a lot of things. It was going against NCAA basketball, going against the NCAA wrestling finals, and whatever else is on. And just a Saturday night in general.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me a little bit of that Yair Rodriguez fight, where it was kind of like it came out of nowhere and then it had this spectacular finish. Typically I can never tell where I should start with the prelims or the main card. You just talked about the main event, so let's start there just because, for the listeners out there, I'm sure that's what they want us to get to, so let's get to it. At 32 years of age, Anthony Pettis has one of the more impressive resumes in MMA history. He's had his share of losses, but he has fought everyone at multiple weight classes. So when he decided to take a crack at 170, you knew two things. There would be no tune-up fight, and it would be exciting. Excitement is exactly what we got as he took on former 170-pound title contender Stephen Thompson. The fight was mostly a chess match on the feet with Pettis holding his own, but honestly losing most of the exchanges. Then Thompson made the fatal mistake of letting Showtime get too close to a fence, and the Showtime Superman punch was born. We got to come up with a better name for that. I'm sure we can. Pettis knocked Wonder Boy dead at the end of the round and gave his career a shot in the arm. In the post-fight, Conor McGregor said he has interest in a fight with Showtime. Keith, did you feel Pettis was in control in any way, or did he just find an opening and close the show?
I think he just found an opening and closed the show. He didn't look good. Thompson was picking him apart. I mean, you look in the first round, Pettis his nose was bleeding. He possibly has a broken nose. He's bleeding profusely. I felt like Thompson was leading the race, and every minute that went down, he was extending his lead. As to use a track term, he was just getting lengths ahead of him. And if someone paused the fight 10 seconds before the knockout, and someone said to me, "Okay, someone's getting knocked out in the next 10 seconds," I would have put every money I had on that Thompson would have. He kept kicking to the body and then maybe went up high with a high kick or slipped in a right hand or something. That's what I would have guessed. To have guessed that Pettis would land this flying Superman punch and knock out a decorated striker like Thompson, moving up a weight class, to me, was shocking. It was absolutely shocking. And what made it even more shocking is that Pettis, as much as we credit him as a great striker, and I think he is a great striker, he's never been a one-strike knockout guy. He's not a Conor McGregor who lands one big shot, or a Mark Hunt lands one big shot. He's always been a attrition guy, a guy who kind of scores points, gets ahead, picks them apart, and finishes guys with just volume, not one punch power. That's what, to me, was even more shocking.
Yeah, he seems like the kind of guy that has that shot that sort of drops in and he swarms and he's good at that and then finishing. But, yeah, Thompson was knocked dead. And to kind of piggyback off what you were saying, we'll reference some of Mike Bond's post-fight stats here and some of his information, which does a great job on MMA Junkie. It was Thompson's first knockout loss of his career. kind of also, like you said, Pettis has alternated wins and losses over his past 8 fights. Also, another thing that kind of jumped out at me, this is Pettis' first knockout victory since January 26, 2013, a span of 2,247 days and 12 fights. That's a long time. So, I mean, for him to do that now to a guy who's never had it happen to him before, maybe it took a little spring off the cage to generate the power needed for that knockout. All right, let's talk about the post-fight. Conor McGregor, and I have for fans of the Cageside Press Network and some of these bum rushes I've been doing, I have one about Conor McGregor that's coming, which I think talks a little bit more about why Conor McGregor has so many things going on right now. I think it's sort of a marketing thing, but we'll get to that in that bum rush. But what do you, in the post-fight, Conor said, hey, welcome to the group of people who have won at 45, 55, and 70. It's just me, you, and Florian. Maybe we can hook it up. What do you think should be next for Showtime? Should he go chasing a Conor fight, or is Conor just kind of...
Well, if Conor wants to fight, you give Conor the fight. As much as we hate to say it, what Conor wants, he should get. I mean, he's a face of the sport. He's the star of the sport. He doesn't seem that interested in fighting until recently, where he's kind of throwing out these little – he's throwing out to Cerrone, he's throwing out to Masvidal, he's throwing one out to Pettis. I agree with you. I think he's just trying to stay in the limelight a little bit. If Conor really wants to fight and it's going to get him to fight, give him the fight. That said, who I think Pettis should fight is – I'm probably going to give you the most unpopular opinion in anybody in MMA. And I want to give you my thinking on this first.
Okay.
Welterweight is long jammed, and Pettis being the third Rufus-Port fighter in the contention right now makes it even harder. You figure the champion Usman and Covington, they're pretty much locked up. They're going to fight each other. Masvidal is a fight that a lot of people keep throwing out saying Pettis and Masvidal. I'm sorry, if you give a guy a 3-piece in a soda, you got to give him a fight. I think it'd be retarded if Masvidal and Edwards doesn't go at it. He's not going to fight Askren. He's not going to fight Woodley. RDA is already booked against Kevin Lee, and that fight's out a little bit. So by the time the winner of that fight, who we've already seen RDA destroy Pettis, by the time he gets that fight, we're so far out. He's already fought obviously he just beat Thompson. He's already fought Michael Chiesa. Kind of leaves Robbie Lawler, and it leaves Santiago Ponzinibbio. And however, or Damian Maia. I really want to see Askren and Maia. I just think that'd be phenomenal for grappling fans. I'm probably in the minority on that. And then he obviously is not going to fight Woodley, so I would have Woodley versus Ponzinibbio. I think Woodley's higher ranked than Pettis. I think he deserves a more high profile. So now you have to go down to the next tier, which this is absurd. I think he should fight Vicente Luque. When I'm being serious, when I say I know I probably have the most unpopular opinion, that's who I'd have him fight. Or maybe Alessio Saleski dos Santos. I think Pettis should be used. I think he has, one win in the division. He's something like 4 over his last 4 and 8 or something. I don't know what his record is recently, but it's really bad. Sometimes you got to let the up and coming guys build a name off of a star or a somewhat of a star. So like I said, I know my opinion was going to be extremely unpopular. So that's who I would book.
Well, I don't hate it, but it's weird when I lean on Tapology a lot in terms of just who's booked. And when you go to their welterweight rankings, like you said, there's not a lot booked, but the pieces and you did a fantastic job of explaining the pieces and sort of where they fit. It does make a lot of sense. I don't think, I don't know, the guy that's kind of hanging out there, you're right. I do think that, let me ask you a question. 3-piece in the soda aside, who more deserves a fight with Jorge Masvidal, Anthony Pettis or Leon Edwards? I
think Leon Edwards. I know, again, I'm in the minority there. How many wins does Edwards have in the division right now? He's got in a row. Too.
Yeah.
Pettis has 1. Now,
big one though.
But now I'm also you're right. You're absolutely, and it's a bigger one.
Right.
But now I'm looking at it from the sport aspect. If I am a shareholder in the UFC, if I am the boss in the UFC, if I'm making money off of fights, then Masvidal and Pettis. I'm just thinking, being a purist, I think Edwards. And I actually think you maybe even be able to market it more because you keep showing the video, show the beef. And Pettis is not going to talk. Edwards is going to talk. I mean, we saw it with him coming after Till. So in a 180 change in my opinion during while I was talking, I actually think Edwards and Masvidal might even be a more marketable fight because of the, I mean, think about how viral did the 3-piece Minnesota become? How viral was the video?
Yeah. So I guess okay. Moving forward, I think here's the beauty of a guy like, and I think I'm going to write a piece coming up about sort of the rich history of the money-weight fighter. Anthony Pettis is a money-weight fighter. Chael Sonnen is a money-weight fighter. King Mo was a money-weight fighter. Dan Henderson's a money-weight fighter. Conor McGregor's a money-weight fighter. There's more guys now that are kind of money-weight fighters because they're chasing 2 belts, because that's the thing. But I think Pettis was a little bit ahead of that wave. Like when he wanted to fight Jose Aldo, he was ready to say, okay, wherever this has to happen, let's do it. Now he says he doesn't want to go to 45 anymore, but I think that he needs to take advantage of being a money-weight fighter. And maybe while 70's figuring itself out a little bit, like you said, I mean, there's a lot of things that line up there. Maybe he goes down to 55 and just finds somebody, I mean, that's the beauty of being a money-weight fighter, right, Keith?
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. And I think that might be the best way. I think if you can get Nate Diaz in there, Pettis, Nate Diaz would be a fight. I know he's booked right now, but Pettis and Cerrone. I mean, you got another guy who's a money-weight fighter. 2 guys who are willing to fight. You get Cerrone and Pettis. I think. I mean, they're both marketable. I mean, how many casual fans do you know can name 10 fighters, and Cerrone's one of them? Right. I mean, everybody. So I think that'd be a fight. But here's the thing: I want to. Everyone needs to slow down on Anthony Pettis right now. I mean, we were digging his grave 24 hours ago. We were digging his grave. I mean, we were doing eulogy. We were talking about him going to Bellator and how would he do in Rising, and 24 hours later, and I know you're not doing this. I'm just saying, I've gone through Twitter, I've saw the Facebook groups, and now everyone's like, oh, Pettis is back. This is the former champion. This is the rise when he Showtime kicked Benson Henderson, or when he beat up Gilbert Melendez, and this. Let's slow down again. He beat an agent, Stephen Thompson, who's won 1 fight out of the last 5. So my question was this when so much, everyone's thinking like, hey, Thompson's back. I mean, Pettis is back. Maybe it's Thompson who's fading.
Yeah, that's the other beauty of the fight game, and why I think that not the job of the promoter is easy. It's not easy, but I think that sometimes you can take advantage of things like this. You put the guy in a main event, he shows up to be the Anthony Pettis that was on the Wheaties box for one night, and you never know what you're getting. You never know if you're getting the joke I used to make about Tito Ortiz, and we can make this about Anthony Pettis, is you never know if you're going to get the Anthony Pettis of old or an old Anthony Pettis, right? That's a great. I love that. On to the co-main event.
So what what fight would have made sense, but their teammates would have actually been Woodley or Askren. I think both of them would have made sense, but of course the teammates and stylistically, Askren's a terrible stylistic matchup for Pettis. But
he said he wouldn't want to fight him in an interview. It's interesting now that this division is so Roufusport heavy. It's almost interesting with Pettis coming into it. It sort of closes some doors for him at some point. Maybe
we need a team alpha male beef to happen at Roufusport. We need to start playing. We need to start tweeting at Woodley like, hey, did you hear what Askren said? just make a fake Ben Askren account and just kind of have them trash talking each other. Something.
There you go. Well, let me throw one more at you before we move on to the co-main event. What do you think about Till versus Pettis?
I mean, I'd be interested in that fight. The problem is Till's stock is so down right now.
Yeah.
And I still, when I think about Till, I really want to see him move up to. I mean, I think it's the same thing we got going. If you don't believe the guy should move up in weight, I don't know how much more evidence you need. I mean, we keep seeing. We start 2 weekends in a row with Masvidal and Pettis this week. I would really like him to move up to middleweight. And you know, a fight that really interests me if he moved up, because I don't want to throw Till right into a top 5, top 10 in middleweight, but I would love him versus Uriah Hall. I think that would be a fantastic.
That would be a good fight. Yeah, sure.
So,
all right, let's move on to the co-main event. Curtis Blaydes seemed destined for a title shot after reeling off 5 wins after his first career loss to Francis Ngannou. However, it was his second career loss also to Ngannou that rerouted the title train for Blaydes. On Saturday night, he drew Justin Willis, an AKA product who has shown a lot of promise. These two are not fans of each other, to say the least. A lot of trash talk occurred pre-fight, and some of that continued into the cage. What also occurred in the cage was a one-sided wrestling clinic by Blaydes, who tossed Willis everywhere, all over that cage, en route to a unanimous decision victory, 30-27, 30-26, 30-25. Keith, they matched Blaydes up here with a striker, certainly not one of Ngannou's pedigree. But the larger question here is, did you take anything away from this fight that made you think Blades could have a performance like this against the best in the world? Justin Willis is not the best in the world.
Well, anybody who knows me knows I'm extremely biased with wrestlers. Like, if I have a hard time picking a fight, I always go with the better wrestler. So, I'm always very confident in wrestlers. So yeah, I think he could do very well in the division. That said, I think a lot of questions were answered at the co-main event. I mean, two questions to me that was answered was how is Blades going to respond from a brutal knockout? I mean, we've seen fighters get gun shy. We've seen fighters just not be the same fighter after knockout. And then the question is a lot of people just assumed Justin Willis could wrestle because he trains with Cain Velasquez and Daniel Cormier. Well, I think we know that he is not a wrestler, terrible wrestler. And to answer the question about how Blades would do, I think he'd be competitive with anybody in the division.
All right, so let's go ahead and talk about it. What's next for Curtis Blades, do you think? I mean, let's take a look at this division, but what do you like for him there?
Well, he called 3 fighters out. I don't remember who the 3 fighters were. I know one was Derek Lewis. To me, that makes no sense right now. Derek Lewis has lost 2 fights in a row. He just came off a dominant win. I don't really like that matchup.
JDS was one.
JDS, I really think JDS should fight Nagano. I mean, they're both kind of knocking on the door for a title shot. They were supposed to fight before the JDS suspension. They kind of talked already about setting up a fight. They both said they were interested in it. So I like that. Obviously, Daniel Cormier is not going to fight Curtis Blades. Blades knew that himself. He had a chance to call Cormier, interview him, and didn't say it. So process of elimination, I think Curtis Blades versus Stipe Miocic is the fight to make. I mean, the former champion coming off a loss. He doesn't seem like he's interested in fighting at all. I'm talking from a perfect world where nobody has a say. I'm the boss. I think I like the stylistic matchup between Blades and Stipe.
Let's talk about Stipe for a second as he relates to Curtis Blades. Do you think the smart play here for Stipe is to just wait out a title shot? Because it doesn't look like it's coming. So, I mean, do you say to the UFC, if you're Stipe, listen, if the only person this guy wants to fight is Brock Lesnar, then let me hook it up with Blades for an interim belt, and then when he goes away, we'll make it official? Or do you think Stipe is like – he seems very adamant about wanting that DC fight, and I don't think it's going to happen for him, Keith.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with you. I don't think I think he sometimes the squeaky wheel gets the oil. It's like a perfect example is the Marlon Moraes debacle with TJ. Seems like Moraes is a no-brainer again, a title fight, and all of a sudden somehow Aljamain Sterling is getting his name. People throwing out, I want to see Aljamain Sterling. Why? Because he's on Twitter and he keeps mentioning, he keeps bickering. I deserve this title fight. Stipe, I mean, you sit on the sidelines. I feel like you got to get skipped. I mean, obviously, I think if Brock Lesnar comes back, he's got to get a shot. Does he deserve it? Of course not. I think we both agree with that. But let's be it. He's one of the biggest stars ever. He's got to get that shot. But Nagano's a big knockout machine. He obviously has Africa, a continent that the UFC really wants to plug into, backing him up. JDS, former champion, great story. If they two battle and the winner of that gets knocked out, I believe that person's going to skip him. If Blades hooks up and gets another win over who knows, that he could skip him. Overeem and Volkov, if one of them gets an impressive knockout, you know how it is. It's always, what have you done for me? If one of those, I mean, it's one of those lands this crazy knockout. Say Volkov lands a flying Superman punch on Overeem and knocks him out. I mean, he could jump him. So I think Stipe needs to get back in there. The thing is, he keeps going to that, the most consecutive title defenses in UFC history for heavyweights. That is true. But the title defenses was 3. I mean, you went on this Demetrius Johnson run where you cleaned out everybody. I mean, you beat JDS, you beat Nagano, and somebody else. Overeem. But you're not Anderson Silva. You're not John Jones. You're not Demetrius Johnson. I think someone's telling him the wrong information. I think he needs to get back in there.
I agree. And I think even if you want to steer into that, if you're the UFC, then you just say, okay, Blades, because Blades, again, referencing Mike Bond's stats, Blades has 40 takedowns landed in UFC heavyweight competition, most in divisional history. So then tout him and Stipe as 2 of the most decorated heavyweights and say that's the thing that promotes the fight. And say, listen, Stipe, we all know DC is going to fight Brock or John Jones. As long as he's got
Sure.
the belt around his waist, and we're going to keep the belt around his waist until he can fight Brock, then that's what's going to happen. So you got to get, you said something I thought was interesting, which is the squeaky wheel gets the oil, but the stubborn wheel gets left behind. And he's moved from squeaky to stubborn.
Yeah,
and I think that his unwillingness to bend with the UFC, you're never going to out-stubborn Dana White. And if you think you are, especially when he's pulling the strings, it's just a waste of your time. I think you're right. I think that they should book Blades and figure out a way to get Stipe out the bench. Maybe throw him a couple more, dollars and say, listen, man, DC's not going to happen. You're probably never going to fight him again.
Yeah, I think it hurt. The other thing that hurts him is how he lost. He lost by first round knockout. It wasn't one of these. Wasn't a fight of the year. Wasn't a controversy. It wasn't like Demetrius Johnson losing Henry Cejudo, where he had this 11 consecutive title defenses, has already beaten Cejudo. The fight comes down. You get 100 people. 50 people said Johnson won. 50 people said Cejudo won. It was he got knocked out in the first round. So. Yeah, I think that hurts his case.
Yeah, and if you're the UFC, I mean, really all you have to do is just say, listen, man, you knocked out Fabricio Verdun. We didn't give him a rematch right away, so come on. I think there's a path for the UFC and Stipe to sort of come to some I mean, Stipe seems like a rational guy. Just on this one, I think he's so adamant about getting that. He's got a path back to the belt. It's just not going to go through DC.
I think a big reason why he's being so stubborn is the fact that the window is closing to get DC. He's got to retire soon. So, if he goes and he takes fights and he takes 1-2 more victories, DC might be tired by then.
Yeah.
So I think it's less the title and more the person. Because, I mean, they're competitive. They're the most competitive people alive, these guys.
Right.
And you have a guy who has a win over you who you believe probably landed a lucky punch or just had a moment and you figure I thought Miocic was winning at that point. I mean, it was obviously extremely early, but I thought he was winning. And I'm sure he probably feels the same way, and he probably believes that he has the blueprint to beat DC, and he's got to get it very soon or he's not going to get that chance ever.
Yeah, and he's only lost 3 fights in his career if you count DC. He cleaned up I think he avenged the no, he didn't avenge the Dos Santos fight. I thought he did. So, I mean, like we talked about.
No, he did. He did.
Oh, yeah, he did. He did. UFC 211. So he avenged that one. He lost to Stefan Struve, but he was so far past Stefan Struve after, there's no avenging that one. Success was the avenge of that loss. And then, I think he probably wants to just clean that last part up. All right. Let's move on. John McDessie is an old head, and Jesus Pinedo is a young guy with a lot of fights. And this was probably a test to see an old veteran to see what we had in him, and he failed. Keith, this one didn't do much for me. Did you see something either in the fight or either of their futures that would deem we talk about this fight at any length?
No, I mean, John McDessie, I think it's safe to say we know what he is at this point. He's been I think he's been in the UFC 8 years now. Pinedo, I mean, his first fight was against Devin Powell, who I don't like saying this, but I mean, Devin Powell is as low level UFC talent as there is. I mean, he's a baseline guy. To give both guys a little, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, a little bit of a pass that they both were supposed to fight other people. Both opponents fell out. They got matched kind of a last minute thing. But my question is, why was this fight third from the top anyways? To me, this is like, every single fight in the entire card, this is the fight I was least interested in. And then they put on a absolute snooze fest to add on to it.
My only comeback to that, and it's not in defense of this fight at all, but it's Chael Sonnen said something I found interesting. And ever since he started doing his videos, it's really like, an education if you really are paying attention. One of the things he said is the way these cards are set up now, in that some of them are on different formats. ESPN's a little bit different, but at Fox, you'd be on one channel for this part and another channel or pay-per-view. He said each of these is sort of like its own card, and I think the way they sort of stagger it, I think they were probably scared to put Macy Barber this high in the card. I mean, she would have been someone who would have made sense too. There was a couple of ladies that were even highly ranked. I think I'm guessing flyweights, but I could be wrong.
Those two, Meyer.
Yeah, they definitely were ranked high enough to be on the main card. So the way they kind of put this card together is, I think, to keep fans watching the card throughout. And they were like, if we got them this far, we could throw them a snoozer, and then they'll still stick around for the co-main and the main.
Yeah, I think also being the fact you look at John McDessie's track record, he throws a lot of spinning attacks. Yeah. Maybe against a guy he came in as a huge favorite. Maybe he gets a spinning kick to the body or some spinning back fist knockout, something like that. Maybe they were kind of hoping prayer and something like that. I don't know. I'm just trying to find something too.
All right, let's move on to the fight that you were most interested in. Jussier Formiga defeated Deiveson Figueiredo. Deiveson Figueiredo came into this fight with #1 ranked Jussier Formiga undefeated, having finished his last 2 opponents. He's a bigger hitter from Brazil, but definitely Formiga is definitely his first championship level test, and he failed. He found a home for a few big shots and even opened Formiga up with an elbow from the bottom, but in the end, Formiga fought a professional veteran fight, stayed away from the power, and found a decision. Keith, let me know your thoughts on the fight, but my question is this the reason this division could be going away? That 2 guys this talented can only give us this fight?
Wow, that's a great question. And I honestly don't even know how to answer that. You got me stumped on that one. So yeah, that's a really good question. Well, I mean, the flyweights, generally speaking, there's not a lot of stoppages. It's the lower you go down the weight class, the lower you're getting stoppages. So I think that's one reason. Some people, like I have my close friend John, he cannot get interested. The lower the weight class, the less interest he gets into it. I'm the opposite. I'm assuming you're probably similar. We hardcores love the scrambles. We love all the fun stuff. A lot of people don't like that. That said, I thought the 3rd round was bad. I thought the first 2 rounds were actually pretty fascinating to me because of such a stylistic. I thought Formiga he couldn't just shoot. He had to set up the take. He had to time it. He had to almost make Figueiredo seem like, okay, I'm going to strike with you now. And I thought he kept doing that. And then he dropped down on takedown, which I was very impressed with Formiga the first 2 rounds. Obviously, he was up 2 rounds. He put it on a little coast the 3rd round. Still, I thought he won the 3rd round with some takedowns in that. The issue with me is what I noticed in this fight, I saw with Formiga was this is a guy that has been in the top 10 and fought the best guys compared to a guy just now in the top 10, hasn't faced as quality because I felt Figueiredo was chasing the knockout. And I know you've been a fan of the sport and fan in all combat sports for a long time. The knockout comes. You can't chase it. You have to land the shot at the right time. And I felt like it was so obvious he kept trying to throw. He kept either trying to throw the overhand right or the uppercut, which set up takedowns. I was really surprised that Formiga came to this fight as an underdog. I picked Formiga to win. I don't want to pat myself on the back because I picked another underdog and it flopped big time, which is the very next fight. But if you look at the Jared Brooks fight, Jared Brooks showed the game plan. He kept taking down Figueiredo, and Jared Brooks is not the grappler Formiga is. So I think because of the big O on the loss columns next to Figueiredo is the reason why he came in as a favorite. And then obviously he had that impressive knockout over John Moraga. But I was impressed by Formiga. And like I said, I'm probably in the minority on that one.
No, I mean, I think he looked good, and I think he certainly – and we'll get to what's next for him in a little bit later on in our Before We Let You Go segment where we talk about some of the stuff that came out of the fight and all that. But I just – it's funny. When you watch fights long enough, you see the opening that might end the fight. And like you said, if you wait for it and you're patient as a fighter, like when he landed that first uppercut, I wrote in my notebook, I was like, that'll be the fight. That'll be the punch that ends it. But like you said, he chased it, and when he chased it, it was like, had he just waited for it? Because, I tell my friends who are casuals who want to know more about fights when I watch them with them, I go, once you find a hole, it's almost impossible to close that hole because you develop that hole over 8 weeks of training. So you react a certain way, that hole is there. And you get kicked in the leg, you do a certain thing. Maybe you drop your left hand. And that hole's there, and it's almost impossible to close them in the course of a fight. Sometimes you can, but you almost have to switch yourself offensively. It's hard to close defensive holes unless you change your offensive, what your game plan is. And that once he hit that uppercut, I was like, okay, that's going to be there. And I was expecting the fight to end that way. And like you said, he went chasing for it and just never found it. All right, let's move on. Many people thought that had he stayed healthy, Luis Pena would have won his season of The Ultimate Fighter. In his last fight, his shot at redemption was against the man who won the season, Mike Trizano. Trizano won a split decision. And Saturday brought Pena back to the octagon looking to get back on the winning track. I thought you could make a case, Keith, that this was one of the better fights of the night, but it didn't leave me looking forward in any substantial way. So feel free to give your thoughts on the fight, of course. But my question is, Luis Pena is a very skilled, seemingly very popular guy. why can't I get excited about his career? And am I the only guy? What am I missing? What's he missing?
No, I actually, I always think of like fighters as stock market. Was it, did the stock go up? Did the stock go down? I felt this performance, even though he got a win, he landed some big clean shots. He showed some good power. I thought his stock went down. Steven Peterson, and so let me back up. I patted myself on the back for picking Formiga upset. Well, I also picked Steven Peterson, and that obviously didn't work out for me. Overlooked some things. I like Steven Peterson's not that good. Two things that really jump out to me about Pena. One, well, first, Steven Peterson. Steven Peterson, I mean, you saw his fight against Brandon Davis. You saw his fight against Matt Bissett. And now you saw his fight against Luis Pena. I mean, extremely tough, but extremely hittable. I mean, the broadcast kept calling him a zombie that he just walks through punches. I thought Pena, one, she could have took him out. Two, Pena's takedown defense is terrible. I mean, he kept trying to go for submissions instead of trying to work the scramble. And the higher level you get up, you got against a good wrestler or a good grappler, he's going to get himself in some really serious trouble doing this. And to me, Pena, I wasn't that high on him already, and I'm even lower on him now. There's and then the weight cut down to 145. That seemed like a disaster. Go back up to 155. But this, to me, I mean, if he faced a good wrestler, he's going to get swarmed.
Let's talk about this for a second, the weight cutting stuff, because I have always thought, when people are like, oh man, these guys are killing themselves for this or that. My take on that is, especially a guy like Luis Pena, he's killing himself for an advantage over the guys he's fighting. Most natural fighters who would fight at 145 pounds are much shorter than he is. So the reason why he's fighting at that weight is to have an advantage of reach and all these different things, maybe power. So, I mean, let me get your thoughts on weight cutting and how much really should we feel badly for these guys? I mean, they could make lifestyle changes that wouldn't make these weight cuts so difficult. I mean, they're weight cutting for a competitive advantage, and yet when they miss weight or they have tough weight cuts, it's sort of like I don't want to say they're seeking sympathy, but sympathy is given to them, or at the very least empathy. So what are your thoughts on the weight cutting?
Well, I don't think they should get it. I don't think they should get any sympathy at all. If you are contractually obligated to make a weight class and you don't make it, I think it's so unfair to his opponent. He came in 2.5 pounds overweight. If he cut that extra 2.5 pounds in a fight that was back and forth, what would have that done to his body? How would his cardio have zapped? Some of those takedowns he defended, would he have been able to defend those takedowns if he zapped his body, which obviously was already zapped it even more, or drained it even more? So in a sense, by not making weight, he came in with a huge advantage. I mean, Peterson cut that last 2.5 pounds. I mean, he didn't. And maybe if Peterson weighed in 2.5 pounds over, didn't suck 2.5 more pounds, maybe he would have had even more energy and he would have got more takedowns or whatever. So that is a big issue that I've always had. The overall general question, which is, to me, is such a fascinating topic, and I feel like there's such a switch in mentality over the years. For years, you'd always hear, hey, drop down a weight, be the biggest one. As fans, we'd always be calling, and media members, we'd always be calling, hey, you're struggling with weight class. Go down a weight class. You'd be bigger. You'd be stronger. And now it's like, I mean, how much more evidence we need that we had it so backwards? In fact, that if you're struggling a weight class, maybe you should go up. I mean, the heavyweight champion of the world is a former light heavyweight champion. Middleweight champion was a welterweight. I mean, you see it, Masvidal. I mean, Gastelum's fighting for the title. I mean, there's so many examples. We could talk. We can name 30 right now of guys who got more success moving up. So, I heard somebody say this. It was Anthony Rocco Martin who said it. I don't remember who he said it to, but he said that he drained his body so much because there was a lack of confidence in his own skills.
Right.
That I think it's what happened with Pettis. Remember when Pettis went down to 145?
Yeah.
It's because he was scrambling, trying to find success anywhere. And I think that's what happens when you see guys dropping down. And I hope we see more fighters going up. Yeah.
And maybe it's like you said, I can't handle the power at this weight. Maybe I'll go down a weight class. Because before, I remember the discussion always was, will their power translate if they go down? If they were heavy-handed at 55, will they be heavy-handed at 45? All right, let's move on to the future. Macy Barber is the youngest fighter on the UFC roster and wants to be its youngest champion ever. Initially, that journey was going to happen at 115 pounds, but Barber decided to move up to 125 pounds and chase the gold Valentina Shevchenko puts around her waist. The journey began on Saturday night as the undefeated future of the UFC drew J.J. Aldridge. Aldridge came in with a solid game plan, had Barber backing up, and brought the fight to her. While I want to say that we have discovered some holes in Barber's game, a dislike of fighting backing up and not high-level striking from range or from distance. Barber, despite being dropped early, found her way to the finish. Keith, how'd you see the fight, and what's the future hold for the self-proclaimed future of the UFC?
I'm still on the Macy Barber hype train. I'm staying on board for the time being. I know many people jumped off. I mean, I think you pointed out two mistakes that she's been making. Another one, she kept throwing kicks without setting it up, which she kept. Aldridge kept timing her on that. That obviously is an error she affects. But we got to keep reminding people she's 20 years old, and I hate doing this, but I'm going to do this. I spoke to her this week. I interviewed her just before. And what I love about what she said is she has that goal to beat John Jones' Jugular's record. But she actually, because she's so young, she has 5 years before that to make it. She actually expects to lose along that journey, which really kind of blew my mind because I didn't expect her to say that. But she knows there's going to be growing pains. I mean, a perfect example, look at Max Holloway at 20 years old. Now look at Max Holloway at 25, 26, 27, yeah. whatever his age is. She has holes, but she's nowhere near her prime. I mean, she is years away from her prime. So what fighter didn't have holes at 20 years old? And two things that really I was actually impressed by her performance was in the second round, it seems like everyone is just saying like, oh, she was losing, and then she landed that left hand, hurt her, and swarmed her. No. If you watch the second round, it starts getting a lot more balanced. And it seems like Barber started catching Aldridge's timing. And then that landed the big shot. And she has a killer instinct. We've seen it 3 fights in a row. When she had Jamie Collin on Dana White Contender hurt, she finished her. When she had, Hannah Cyphers, she beat the brakes off of Hannah Cyphers. And now J.J. Aldridge, who I think is a good fighter. I think she's an underrated talent in the division. She's 20, and Barber just took her out, got a knockout, which you don't see a lot in women's MMA. You don't see a lot in a lower weight class like flyweight. So I think it's actually a pretty positive night for Macy Barber.
Here's a couple people I'll compare her to. I'm going to draw a little. I'm going to bring the Ronda stuff up a little bit later, but let's a couple people I think are more fitting comparisons for Macy Barber than either John Jones or Ronda Rousey, even though she's chasing John Jones and Ronda Rousey in a way. Justin Gaethje. I remember I covered Justin Gaethje in the World Series of Fighting. He would say before every fight, "Somebody's going to get me. I just don't think it's going to be him." And then when he got to the UFC, he started getting them, And that's a great
quote, though. Yeah, that's a great quote.
He's like, "Somebody's going to get me. Somebody's going to get me." And the other person I think that is really very similar to Macy Barber is Aaron Pico. Because Aaron Pico very much he's had some stumbles, super talented, great outlook. I think that she's right. I mean, the problem with someone like Macy Barber is that she's so young that she has to have holes. But she's got this will about her that she seems to be able to get through them. And the question is she going to have a will that gets her past everybody except for the top 5? And then when she gets to the top 5, she won't have the skills she needs when she gets there. That's the scary part. Like you said, she has time. What do you think about those comparisons?
No, I think that spot, especially the Aaron Pico one. The Aaron Pico one is, a lot of hype, a lot of background. The Aaron Pico bandwagon is like, I'm riding on the Aaron Pico. I'm not just sitting on the train. I'm laying down in chairs. I'm putting my seat back. I took my pants off because nobody else is on the train but me. I'm still on the Aaron Pico train. So just so you know, that train might be going off the track, and I might be looking really bad, but I'm still staying on the Aaron Pico. So there's 2 things. I want to talk about the mental aspect because I feel like she is so mentally strong. The fact before she comes to UFC to make a claim like that is so bold, and that puts a target on your back. And I'm not even talking about Valentina Shevchenko, the champion. Other ones. Fans want to see her lose. Teams want to see her lose. The competition. There's 2 people that she reminds me of that made claims like that. Brandon Vera, and it came into the UFC. And before he even had a title, he was already talking about winning 2 championships in light heavyweight and heavyweight. And there was another guy who did the same thing, and that was Conor McGregor. So the question is she going to burn like Brandon Vera, who I think was a little more successful than people give him credit for, but because of how high expectations were on him, he kind of looks like his disappointment? Or will she become the female Conor McGregor? Who knows?
That's true. We'll have to see. All right, let's move on to some of the prelim. I want to talk about this fight, and then we'll just kind of shoot through the rest of the prelims.
Sure.
Bryce Mitchell took an old school path to the UFC by being a member of the Ultimate Fighter, and Bobby Moffett took a new school path to the Octagon by pressing Dana White on Tuesday Night Contender Series. They met Saturday night in a very even fight of two well-matched fighters, but in the end, Bryce Mitchell was a little better on the feet, sitting Moffett down in the first, a little better on the ground, securing both a deep triangle, what I thought Bobby Moffett was curtains for him, and what seemed to be a deep RNC, although the closer you looked at it, it really wasn't there. And all that added up to a 29-28 victory. Keith, how impressive is this performance in and of itself, and how impressive is it considering this kid got his scrotum ripped to shreds by a drill?
I mean, that I can't even.
It's no slouch.
Yeah, I can't even listen to those interviews where he talks about it. I mean, I can't do it. Yeah, Moffett. I mean, I one thing I do right for fans that I do the Dana White Contender Series previews, so I've seen a lot of Moffett, and the one thing that really stands out to me about Moffett is that a lot of guys come up the regional scene and they don't fight anybody. That's not true with Moffett. He fought a lot of good fighters: Ethan Lee, Ronnie Barsalis, Nate Gentleman. He's fought some good fighters. Obviously, he got that controversial win over Chaz Kelly, but I still thought it was a good opponent. Bryce Mitchell is 24 years old. And that's what really stands out for me. I will dig in later because Bryce Mitchell falls under one of our special categories later. But one thing they kept talking about, it was him being part of a smaller team, and that he takes pride in that. I still believe that the best way to go is get with a big team. And if you remember, John Jones was part of the bomb squad, and when he first came on the scene, he was talking about, being part of the bomb squad up in Cortland, New York, and then eventually he went to Grace Jackson. I'd like to see Bryce Mitchell eventually go to a team. I think a perfect one, if he wants to stay down south, would be Fortis MMA in Texas.
A couple notes that I had during this fight. Bobby Moffett said before, and Bobby Moffitt's a fighter here local to Phoenix. I mean, his gym's 5 minutes from my house.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but that's the thing, is that that's what makes this Bryce Mitchell victory even more impressive to me.
Yeah.
Because Bobby Moffett is part of a great team. I mean, the lab is loaded with guys from 145 to 185 pounds. So, I mean, Moffett has no shortage of training partners, has experienced coaches, I mean, he has the full complement of what you would need. And even though he's a young guy, Bryce Mitchell, Bobby Moffett, that is, Mitchell came in and took care of business. Now, the other part of it is, before the fight, Moffett said he was a slow starter. Someone that we've heard in the past that used to call themselves a slow starter was Cerrone, and he sort of figured that out. Do you think that, I mean, this was a close fight. Had Moffett come out a little bit more gangbusters, maybe it could have went the other way. Do you think that's really a problem?
Yeah.
I mean, about him?
Yeah, no, yeah, I think you hit it dead. So you mentioned the lab. I think that actually would be a great team for Mitchell to go to. I mean, they're red hot too. In the UFC, it's okay on the regional scene to lose rounds because chances are the fight's going to be in a stoppage. You can come back. In the UFC, the higher level go, you can't give away rounds. I thought we'll get to it later, but I thought Shelton did that in the open fight. You can't give away rounds, and the fact that he lost the first round and he was a lot more competitive in the second and third round. I mean, now you think about it, you lose the first round, all Mitchell has to do is win one of the next two, or just be, I know a lot of people, I thought it was very competitive. A lot of people scored it for Bobby Moffett. I would have been okay if Moffett got a decision. I think Moffett is a guy. It's funny because when I did the Dana White Contender Series, I wasn't that high on him, and he's actually, even in a loss, he's impressed me even more. So I think his stock, in a weird way, between the Skelly and the Mitchell loss, I believe in him more than I did earlier.
All right, sounds good. Let's move on to the early prelims. The early prelims had some intrigue with Chris Gutierrez, Randa Marcos, Jennifer Maia, and Marlon Vera all picking up victories. Keith, I'll run through these. You tell me what mattered to you, what didn't. Marlon Vera defeated Frankie Saenz by TKO via strikes. Now, the big shot was legit, but when he got him on the ground, there was some controversy. Yeah. I even said, well, I'll get to that later, but the shots to the back of the head. Did you think it was a legit stop?
Yeah. I think they might not have mattered. I think he was going to put him on anyways, but still, you don't know. You see, they were clearly in the back of the head. I think the referee, I don't remember who was refereeing that one. I thought they did a bad job. But kudos to Vera, who has been categorized as a slow starter, to come right out there and start Frankie signs. And I mean, Vera's on a run, and I feel like everyone keeps talking about like, is how good is he? I feel like I think he just turned 26. I feel like what happened is Vera is just reaching his prime, and that's what we're seeing right now.
Okay, Jennifer Maia defeated number 5th ranked Alexis Davis by unanimous decision, 29-28, all across the way. What you think about this one?
Yeah, it was really weird. I thought Alexis Davis reminds me of like a female Jake Shields. And what I mean by that, and not fighting style, but I mean is not be very athletic, but always getting the fight to be the way she wants it to be. And that's what Jake Shields always did. And she got hurt in the first round, but then she kind of turned into her fight, did the same in the second. Then all of a sudden she just abandoned the wrestling in the third round, which was shocking to me. And she just kept leading with those kicks and kind of exchanging with Maia. And I thought Alexis Davis gave the fight away because she didn't turn into wrestling, which is shocking to me because I believe one of the best things about her game is her fight IQ.
Really quick, at women's flyweight, obviously Valentina Shevchenko is the champ. So if Alexis Davis was ranked 5th, according to the last UFC rankings, I don't see Maia in here. So if the top 5 is Jessica Ai, Sijara Eubanks, Caitlin Chokachin, Joanna Jacek, and then Davis, so we'll talk about the person right below her, which is Liz Carmouche. Is Jennifer Maia ready for fighters like that? Should she be matched up next with a lower fighter?
No, I think she
flyweight in the world?
Yeah, she lost that Carmouche already. That was her first fight in the UFC. She lost to Carmouche. I think she could do okay against Caitlin Chikagian. I missed some of the fighters you said. Sijara Eubanks, I think, is a terrible stylistic matchup because of Maia's weaker on the ground, and that's where Eubanks thrives. But like an Andrea Lee, I think she would do well. Or not. When I say well, I'm not saying I'm picking her to win, but I think that's a win. The fight she could win. I'm assuming I don't know what Andrea Lee is, but she's got to be pretty high up in those rankings.
She's top 10. So top 10 looks like Angela Lee going backwards. Andrea Lee, Lauren Murphy, Roxanne Modafferi. Number 7 is Joanne Calderwood. Then we talked about Carmouche at 6, Jan Jacek, Caitlin, Eubanks, and Jessica Ai.
Yeah.
Where do you see her in there?
Well, she's already top 10. Yeah, I do. She already beat Roxanne Modafferi in Invicta. I think she would beat Lauren Murphy. I think that'd be really interesting because Lauren Murphy would have to turn into an ugly fight. She has a gaping hole. Maia has a gaping hole with her takedown defense. She reminds me a lot of Lena Spania. She's got terrible takedown defense, and she looks for submissions on the way of the takedowns. But her hands are fast and they're powerful. I mean, you saw her rock Alexis Davis. The division is wide open, and I think she'd do okay.
All right, Randa Marcos defeated Angela Hill via submission by armbar right in the first round towards the end of it. With a little bad blood between these two girls coming in, there was not that much of that kind of translated into the fight. But so what'd you see in this fight, and where are we at with Angela Hill?
Angela Hill is I just scratching my head with her because this is a girl when she first came to UFC, she wasn't ready. She got sent to Invicta. Then she looked sensational. I mean, she beat Lavia Hanato Souza, who I think is top 10, top 12 in this division. She picked up that win. She came in the UFC. It looked like she was like turned a corner in her career. And now I feel like she's almost stepped back. And to me, there was two ways to win it. She had to keep the distance. And this fight was she had to fight like the two winners of the first two fights. She either had to be like Espinoza and keep moving and keep having Marcos guessing, or be like Gutierrez and keep feinting and throwing to the body and feinting and keeping Marcos from coming in because she doesn't know when the strike's coming. And she didn't do anything. She let Marcos come right into the clinch. And once Marcos got the takedown, wow. I mean, I was really impressed with that armbar.
Here's where I get weird when it comes to Angela Hill. When you look at her resume, she's lost to all studs. So she's lost to Carlos Esparza, Tisha Torres, Rose Namajunas, Jessica Andrade, Nina Ansarov, Courtney Casey, Randa Marcos. I mean, these last two, she if she's the real deal, maybe you think she gets past Casey and Marcos, but I don't know. Yeah. I mean, when you lose to everybody that you probably should lose to, I mean, I guess you're kind of properly rated. You're kind of maybe you found your settling point, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, you're right. It's just one of these girls. She's a young fighter. Kind of new in the sport, and then she gets a win over Lavia Hanato Souza, who I think was obviously the best win of her career. And it looks like she looked like, oh wow, Angela Hill is, kind of reaching, and we expect this like escalator ride up, and it didn't. It became that like the escalator at the airport that just goes like that baseline, and I didn't expect that. And yeah, I think you hit it right on the head because she is what she is now.
All right, we'll go to these next two pretty quickly. Chris Gutierrez defeated Ryan McDonald by unanimous decision, 30-27s all the way around. I was there the night that Chris Gutierrez in World Series of Fighting defeated Tamir Valiev. So Gutierrez is this guy who's just he's a pro, man. He's the kind of guy that, like, he reminds me a little bit of Henry Corrales. Like when Henry Corrales beat Aaron Pico, it doesn't make sense to you until you look closer to Henry Corrales. Do you think Gutierrez has anything for his division? I mean, does he have a run, or is it just a good night?
It's such a good division that it's hard, and this was such a mismatch. McDonald, obviously, he made the UFC because of his perfect record. But if you dug deeper into his resume, he didn't fight anybody. I mean, he got dropped by like a tomato can. So it's really hard to tell. But the two things that Gutierrez really did that I always look for in fighters, that I always think is those calf kicks and feints, and he kept doing both of them, which is always, to me, I thought is a good sign of a improving fighter. But the big issue with McDonald, he shouldn't have been in this fight anyways. He's not a UFC level cut, and this what happens when this would be a little rant I'll go on. If the UFC awards fighters with padded records by getting the UFC, what's going to happen? You're going to kill quality matchups in the regional scene, because if I can get in with a padded record, why would I take a chance to get a loss? And you're going to see, like this weekend, CSMA, you got Jeremiah Wells versus Vinicius DeJesus. I can't even say his last name. DeJesus. It's DeJesus, but it's DeJesus.
Right.
That is such a good fight. Would should be in the UFC. I think there'd be a lot of guys in the UFC, but one of these guys is going to take a loss, and that's going to set him back. And you're going to stop having this happen. You're going to stop having these fights happening if you keep rewarding guys like Ryan McDonald with UFC contracts.
I'm going to throw three names at you real quick just because, I've talked to Gutierrez and I was impressed with him. I was impressed with him tonight. Like you said, the feints and stuff. Tell me if any of these guys seem like a guy he's at a similar level with. Thomas Almeida.
Okay.
Marlon Vera.
Okay, yeah.
Ricky Simone. If you were to choose one of those three for him to fight next.
I wouldn't put him that high yet. I wouldn't have him fight any of those.
Those guys are pretty much top 20 fighters.
Sure. So Vieira's on such a good run right now that I can't see them making it. The only way I see a fight like that getting made is if Vieira has an opponent that, like, for example, Vieira versus Simone's happening, and then Simone gets hurt. Or actually, Vieira and Simone, both those guys, to me, are in such runs that would make no sense for their careers to fight an unknown, like, other than hard codes, an unknown like Gutierrez. Almeida, that's an interesting matchup. But the problem is, I don't know how Gutierrez has been fighting lower level, and Thomas Almeida has been fighting high level. I mean, he losses to Rob Font, Cody Garbrandt, so it's kind of hard to really gauge where he is.
Yeah.
So I don't hate that. I would like something like a step, maybe a top 40 fighter.
You know, it's interesting. I started looking at that, and it was like, so Luke Sanders is 36.
That I think that'd be a perfect matchup.
Frankie Saenz, Brad Katona, those kind of guys are in the top 4, are the step below. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So one thing I do want to say about Gutierrez is he fought Hani Barcelos, and that's a good quality opponent, and he took a fight on short notice, and he had moments in that fight. So that's a good sign. And I'm very high on Barcelos. So, I think the guys you just named, I think Luke Sanders, I think that'd be a perfect matchup.
I was finished tonight up. Jordan Espinoza defeated Erik Shelton by unanimous decision. What'd you think about this fight?
You know what? I love the matchup. Just the matchmaking, I thought that was like the perfect test for a newcomer like Espinoza. What I really saw in this fight, it's almost like it really was like the opposites day. It seemed like to me that Shelton was looking for the perfect shot and was kind of gun shy, and Espinoza was one comfortable move around. And usually you would get that with the guy who's been in the UFC for a long time versus the guy making his debut. And it seemed like Shelton was the guy like feeling like the jitters in there, where I thought he gave away the first 2 rounds, but not being busy. And Espinoza was busy. And then finally the 3rd round, he started finding his range, and he was actually putting on Espinoza. He just ran out of time. And the one thing that really Espinoza is a guy that has just continued to improve. He's a like New Mexico guy, but he kind of came up. He fought a bunch of times up in New England where I live, so I kind of familiar him. I mean, it wasn't that long ago he was losing to like a mid-level talent like Dennis Piver. So it's really cool to see how improving this guy is. So I'm glad to see him get a win in the UFC.
All right, let's end the talk of fights before we get on to the fun stuff with some of the performance of the night bonuses, the gates, and all that stuff. Anthony Pettis, Randa Marcos, Bryce Mitchell, and Bobby Moffitt each earned $50,000 bonuses for their performances at Saturday's UFC on ESPN Plus 6 event. Pettis and Marcos each earned performance of the night honors, while Mitchell and Moffitt won the fight of the night. UFC on ESPN Plus 6 drew an announced attendance of 10,863 for a live gate of 939,095. Total fight time for the 12-bout card was 2 hours, 23 minutes, and 45 seconds. I think I kind of know what you're going to say this, Keith, but I'll ask anyway. The pace of the ESPN cards.
I mean, they're much better. I mean, this one was a tough one because of how many decisions we had, but it's much better. I mean, we complained about paying $5, but if it's going to eliminate the commercials and the bigger to me than the pace is the start time. I've been calling for the earlier start times. I love cards ending at 11 instead of 12, 1, sometimes 1:30. I know obviously you don't have that problem in the West Coast, but we in East Coast. And this, can I just say this real quick? I know this is way off topic, but if you live in Europe or who I know you have it worse. But hear me out. When guys in the East Coast, a guy like Ariel Helwani is saying, "Oh, can we start these start times early?" It sucks having to go to 1 o'clock. We understand that yours is ending 4 or 5 in the morning, but if we move the start times up, okay, so now it ends at your time 3 in the morning. That's better. Like, don't fight us with it. Join us. Like,
right.
Don't. Like, we're on the same side. It would benefit you. So stop, Europeans. We know you have it bad. Sorry.
Oh yeah. So listen, I'm with you because I was moved here to Phoenix in 2008. I was born in New Jersey and I was raised in Virginia, and I served in the military in South Carolina. So I know about those late nights for sure, man. I was happy when I moved here, but I'm also happy. I said this to someone and they disagreed, but I think it's legit. I feel like ESPN tries to get everything done before the 11 o'clock Sports Center. I really do. I think
that could. Well, I mean, the ESPN has been doing it as much. I mean, I was one of them. I'm sure everybody was complaining about going to ESPN. Oh my God, we got to pay another. There's going to be another paywall, and then everything that we said has been fantastic. I thought everything ESPN has done. I mean, as much as we like hate having Stephen A. Smith commenting, it makes the sport feel bigger when that stuff happens. And these little stories, like the little thing they throw in with Michelle Waterson, or even the Ryan McDonald story, these little things. ESPN is just, I mean, there's a reason why they've been the worldwide leader in sports for 30, 40 years now. I mean, they're just doing it right.
Yeah. All right, let's move on.
Sorry, they get it because look at the other sports. Imagine putting on football and the Super Bowl starting at 10 o'clock at night, or the fourth quarter starting at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
I mean, it's obviously you don't want to compare MMA to football, which is not even comparable. But I don't know how many people, 50 million people watch the Super Bowl. Well, if the Super Bowl ended at 1 a.m., there wouldn't be 50 million people watching. It'd be a lot less.
That's true. All right, let's move on to trending up, trending down. The stock market thing like you talked about. My trending up was Chris Gutierrez. We talked a lot about him, so I won't really get into it. My trending down is the flyweight division. It feels like the UFC keeps throwing these flyweight fights out there to either prove they are right about getting rid of it or prove they are wrong. The flyweights aren't doing a lot to prove this division should be kept, although admittedly they shouldn't be on the chopping block anyway. So it seems weird they have to defend a piece of real estate they shouldn't have to defend, but that's the world we live in. All right, you already kind of talked about Luis Peña's trending down. Who'd you have trending up? Anybody?
Trending up, I'm going to actually go with Bryce Mitchell. I mean, besides beating a veteran, but also I thought he won it. The pushing that hillbilly Arkansas thing, besides winning the match, he's winning fans. Jason Knight had it. Remember, Jason Knight had this like cult following in the deep South. Your Alabamas, your Mississippis, your Arkansas. Bryce Mitchell, if he can win that, he can actually become a star and he's only 24 years old. So I really like that. And when it comes to trending down, I mean, obviously Stephen Thompson, he's won one of his last 5 fights. It's no fun to pick the main event guys. I'm going to go with Angela Hill. I thought she had such a terrible performance, and this was her chance to kind of stay relevant in the division. And as in the flyweights, I totally agree with that. I think the reason why we're getting these matchups is they have contracts they have to fulfill. And once a fighter loses by contract, they can cut them. So they're just like, see you later, Erik Shelton. You'll be seeing him fighting at LFA next month.
Yeah, the thing about Mitchell that's interesting, and we didn't even talk about this when we were talking about the fight, but those submissions that he pulled on Moffitt Moffitt's a pretty strong grappler. That might have put a couple of guys out. So I mean, that's a good point. Had even a more dominant performance if you look at those had they been successful.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
let's move on to Not For Nothing. Let's start with Not For Nothing. If somebody doesn't get in Macy Barber's ear, we might be looking at another Ronda Rousey, both good and bad. Not For Nothing, but John McDessie, 2 fights from your main event doesn't speak well of your card.
No.
Not For Nothing, but Anthony Pettis should get into the Hall of Fame just on who he was willing to step into the octagon against. Not For Nothing, why are we burying Curtis Blades and Stipe Miocic, 2 record-breaking heavyweights, so DC can chase money fights?
Wow, those are great.
All right,
I didn't know we'd have the. Can I give you 2?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I didn't have the long list you have, but Not For Nothing. The commission. What was up with the Chris Gutierrez coming in the ring with double ankle lifts? Is there somebody's job to check that beforehand? And my other Not For Nothing. ESPN is I just complimented you. UFC, I complimented the deal. But you know what? Check the schedule ahead of time. This fight should have been – this card starting at 8 o'clock at night should have been last weekend, and the London card should have been this weekend. I'll tell you why. Because at 7 o'clock was the NCAA wrestling finals, and that is a field that a lot of people who love combat sports love watching. It happens once a year. How great would it have been having the European card roll right in on ESPN, leading into ESPN, the NCAA finals? I mean, you blew that one. Why would you have them competing against each other? So, Not For Nothing. Come on, ESPN.
All right, let's go to the shocker of the night. I have to go with Anthony Pettis. That's the thing I think that's going to stick out for me, and when I think about this card years from now. Do you have a shocker of the night?
I mean, same thing. I mean, Anthony Pettis knocking out Stephen Thompson. How can it be anything else?
All right, from the notebook, this is kind of stuff that I ends up in the margins when I'm taking my notes for the fight. The Anthony Pettis hat that he was wearing in the pre-fight interview was pretty dope. UFC wisely changed angles on the replay of the Vera Sainz finish because Vera was clearly striking the back of the head. They probably didn't want to have DC when DC says, "Hey, take a look at the finish. Here's you smashing a guy in the back of the head." Lastly, Cormier, I think, does the best job of talking about fighters he has a relationship with. With Dominic Cruz, you can always tell, and Dominic Cruz is great, but you can always tell when he has a relationship with one of the guys in the cage that it shows through. And then interesting that in the post-fight, Curtis Blades, when calling fighters out, didn't say DC's name. You mentioned this earlier. Yes. Seemed almost like he was told not to.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to talk that. Go ahead.
He was realistic. So one thing he should have did, I don't would have been funny. He said, "Hey, Willis, go work on your wrestling." What he should have said, "Hey, DC, you're his teammate. Go teach him how to wrestle." That's what he should have said. One thing I thought the broadcast, I want to jump on that commentary. I thought the broadcast did a fantastic job with the Ryan McDonald story about his brother. I mean, that was heartbroken. I mean, that's terrible. But what really, broke my heart when they told the story about he was supposed to fight in Contender Series, but instead of that day, he was cleaning out his brother's apartment. That to me was heartbroken. And how about, I don't know if you caught this, how about the little during the Brian Mitchell fight, the little puns they kept throwing with the nuts and the balls.
That was good, yeah.
Way to go, DC. And
let me ask you a question because I haven't had a chance to talk to you about this. What do you think about Trevor Whitman, his role?
Oh, I love it. I love that. And you know what I wish they brought back? I don't know if you remember this. Do you remember when Eddie Bravo used to be on?
And he would do the fight. He would do the score it. Yeah.
Yes, I've been saying that for years. They should bring that back. What I would really like is have the corner. I would like Whitman doing what he's doing, and then give his own score.
Yeah, that'd be good. All right, let's move on to talk that shit. We got a bunch this time. I'm going to get through them as quick as I can. The first one, I didn't come here with any grudges, but when people hurt you with words and disrespect, it scars a little, and when you get the opportunity to get them back, it feels good. That's Randa Marcos post-fight after submitting Angela Hill. Hey, Pawpaw, tell my mama I'm fine and tell her I'll be hungry when she picks me up and I'm taking her out for steaks. I should stop there because that's gold in and of itself, but he continued. I ain't supposed to be here because I'm from Arkansas. Former president's from Arkansas, but never mind that. And Arkansas ain't worth piss. Every time you put a mic in my face, I'm saying Arkansas. And Reebok, I told you I wanted some camo shorts. Bryce Mitchell addressing some hate that has been thrown his way about staying in Arkansas to train and addressing his dinner plans. Cejudo is running from me. Where are you, Cejudo? Did you see a Formiga in the cage post-fight? Side note, Cejudo is not running from this kid. He probably couldn't pick him out of a lineup. He is a good fighter, but I'm telling you, Cejudo's not running from him.
Cejudo already beat him. Already beat him.
There you go.
A young Cejudo, too. A very green Cejudo beat him.
Right, before he figured it all out and tried to hook up with WWE divas.
Yeah.
After 80 fights, I've never been KO'd, this time by a small guy. I can't believe he got me with the Superman punch. Golly, Superman off the cage. It was so ninja, I didn't even see it coming. Stephen Thompson post-fight, courtesy of MMA Junkie.
Yes. And Marlon Vera called out Nathaniel Wood. I like that matchup.
That was good. That's a fun fight. He's another guy. I love his style. Another guy that's going to be a fun style to fight. If he wants to do it, let's do it. I'm not afraid to fight anybody. Anthony Pettis talking to MMA Junkie post-fight about Conor McGregor. This next one is because of my not for nothing about Macy Barber. Macy answered my not for nothing even though she didn't hear it. I'm a completely different person from Ronda, and that's no disrespect to her. She's a phenomenal athlete, phenomenal fighter, and she's had an amazing career, but I want to take my career a little bit different. But if I ever do get a loss, which I'm going to continue to fight to make sure I never get one, but if I ever do, I hope I can come back a little bit differently than she did. But we'll see. I'm hoping to not take that loss. Macy Barber talking to MMA Junkie post-fight. So she answered my not for nothing, even though she didn't even hear it. A lot has changed since we fought, not only with my fighting style, but also with his. He had his path, maybe an easier path to the title. He fought Demetrius Johnson after defeating me and ended up losing, but followed an easier path to get to the title while I had a tougher path, but always being in top 5. This is Juicy and Formiga answering you, even though he didn't hear it, talking to MMA Fighting post-fight.
You got me.
And the last one, now, in response to that, here's a quote Fightful.com posted that may have happened before last night. I didn't check when it came out, but I'm the biggest name now. I hold all the cards. It ain't the flyweight division or the bantamweight division. It's the Cejudo weight division. So I will just wait and see what the UFC has planned for the Cejudo weight division. That was Henry Cejudo talking to Ariel Helwani. What do you think about that?
I think it's the way to go, man. I mean, at the end of the day, you gotta appeal to casual fans. Hey, you ask a casual fan, they don't know the difference between flyweight, featherweight, bantamweight. They don't know the difference. So yeah, just take big fights.
All right, before we let you go, it was announced post-fight by Dana White, Henry Cejudo versus Marlon Moraes is probably up next for UFC Bantamweight title. Formiga versus Benavidez are the next targeted fights at both Bantam and Flyweight, respectively. Speaking of Cejudo and Moraes, they will fight at Bantamweight, and Formiga and Benavidez will fight at Flyweight. What are your thoughts on those fights?
I think Ali Abdelaziz got himself a really good contract. Get some money there. Having the two guys he manages fighting himself for the title. I think they're both fantastic stylistic matchups. Yeah. I mean, I love stylistic matchups, and it's very interesting, especially Moraes and Cejudo. I love it. That's the fight to make.
Earlier this week, Tyrone Woodley has called out Conor McGregor in addition to his teammate Anthony Pettis. So now the people who are in McGregor's orbit are Khabib, Nate, Tyron, Pettis, Cowboy Cerrone, who may be booked with someone else. We'll discuss here in a second. Who's already been the front runners? As recently, I've heard George Masvidal's name. Yeah. Of all the people who could fight Conor McGregor next, Keith, who would you want to see?
Want to see? I actually like the Cerrone idea. That's the one I was looking at. I thought that was the way to go. I don't want to see Khabib. We already saw it. He got wrecked. Woodley, I'm sorry. You just lost your last fight. You don't deserve. Even though Conor lost his last fight, you don't deserve it. We've already seen Nate again, Masvidal. I just, to me, remarkable Cerrone. I think the stylistic of their talk, who I think it's going to be. If it does happen, I still think it's still going to be Nate. I think Nate Diaz, Conor 3 is the fight. With the way everything's lining up, I think it's going to be Nate and Conor.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's the only way to get Nate back in the cage and not – you can't lose that money. But the other thing is that the thing that may be stopping the Cerrone fight, Cerrone's got a little too many submission finishes, Keith, for Conor to crawl in there with him.
Another one that I think would be really interesting that I don't remember if you said is Max Holloway. I mean, they've been kind of back in the Holloway Poirier winner. I know they're supposed to fight Khabib, but sometimes if you get Conor, that's even a bigger prize. So I wouldn't mind seeing the winner of that getting Conor.
All right, a couple more things, and then we'll hit finish strong. DAZN has changed its price structure, upping the monthly price to $19.99. But if you already had a subscription, I think it will remain until mid-2020. I believe, and there is an option to pay for the whole year at once, which comes out cheaper than the original cost. It's $100 for the whole year. What do you think about DAZN so quickly abandoning that $9.99 price point? I
don't think it's a smart move. I think they're really banking on these powerful boxing people. I'm not a boxing guy, but I know they brought in some big name boxing that's going to really attract it. At the end of the day, when it comes to MMA, I know they have Bellator, they have KSW, they come other ones. At the end of the day, they're not going to draw these things. I don't think it's the route to go. But if you're a boxing fan, that's huge. But the reason why they probably bumping the price is because they probably want to attract more boxing guys. Your Canelos, your Anthony Joshua's. I'm just naming guys. I don't know boxing, but I'm assuming those boxing contracts, the big money those guys get, they're gonna have to raise the prices. So
that's true. Okay, lastly, and before we let you go, Rafael dos Anjos and Kevin Lee are hooking it up May 18th in UFC Rochester. How do you like that fight?
Was it Kevin Lee? I missed the first one. Is it Kevin
RDA,
Lee?
Kevin Lee.
Yeah. Oh, I love that fight. I love RDA. I love. I mean, the two former lightweights moving up in weight. I think it's the right move for Kevin Lee. I think Kevin Lee is going to do fantastic. I think he's going to be instantly. I think he's going to win that fight, and I think he's instantly going to be a contender in the division. And I think Kevin Lee is going to do very well at welterweight.
And then Donald Cerrone versus Alan Quinta, maybe getting together May 4th at UFC Ottawa. The Conor thing went away, and then Cerrone found another dance partner. What do you think about that fight?
Fight-wise, yeah, fantastic fight. I think I like Quinta to win that fight. That's not my official prediction until I dig deeper into it. But I think that was the wrong move by Cerrone. I know why. I think why he did it is because obviously Conor's hard to negotiate with. Cerrone wants to fight every weekend. He was probably getting it, so he booked the fight. But I thought Cerrone should have. I think he should have learned a little from Stipe, staying on the sidelines and really pushed for the Conor fight. Until Conor picked someone else, he shouldn't have booked himself an opponent.
All right, guys, move on to Finish Strong. I have said for a long time that there's no set of rules that I wouldn't want to watch Anthony Pettis fight under. I would have wanted to see him in a UFC 1 style tournament. I would have loved to see him fight Pride rules. I'd love to watch him fight an EBI style jiu-jitsu tourney. All that really boils down to is Anthony Pettis is one of the most exciting fighters we have ever seen in combat sports, and he continues to impress as he solidifies what I believe will be a Hall of Fame career. Keith, go ahead and finish strong.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said about Pettis. I couldn't agree more. What I'm going to say is, for years we've been told, and it's been the common thing, that the best weight class in the UFC is lightweight. And I am going to say it is no longer the best division. I believe welterweight is. And I mean, you got all the guys who are in there. But what happened is, not only have you had your welterweights, but you have these new additions from lightweight. Lightweight is getting, power guys in lightweight moving up to welterweight. You got Kevin Lee, RDA, Pettis, Masvidal, Michael Chiesa, Tony Martin, who knows? Then you throw Askren in for one. I think the best division right now is the welterweight division, and I know that's not a popular opinion, but it's the right opinion.
Okay, guys, there you have it. Another SMC is in the books. If you can find two guys that would go down UFC Nashville and handle it better than Keith and I just did, please let me know, because I think we covered about everything you could cover in MMA currently and UFC Nashville. Obviously, this can be heard on the Cageside Press Podcast Network. Keith, where can you be read? Where can you be listened to? Where can you be followed? Give everybody all your particulars.
Cool. You can follow me on Twitter. It's Keith, Keith. My last name Shillan, Shillan, and the word MMA. So Keith Shillan, at Keith Shillan MMA. Sorry, I fudged that. I write for SureDog, Fansided, and I am the producer, and I host one podcast on Loudmouth MMA. But I have some new things. I'll announce it right now. I joined John and the team over at Cageside Press, and I got some other stuff that's going to be on my MMA News. So check out all those wonderful outlets, and I appreciate anybody who gives me a follow.
Absolutely. Guys, he does great work. Obviously, if you just listen to the podcast, you know how smart he is. So obviously all that stuff translates to him, the way he writes, and other podcasts as well. So up next for the UFC on ESPN2, it's going to be Edson Barbosa and Justin Gaethje from the home of Rocky, the place where my old man was born, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It's going to be a great card. Obviously, we'll have a Sunday Morning Corner Man for you after that. So tell all your friends to follow, like, subscribe, do everything you can at Cageside Pods. Follow the at Cageside Press YouTube channel. Follow me at SM Corner Man. Tell your friends, tell your mom, tell everybody you can, and peace.